Welcome to Verify in Field, the Millwork podcast. Your host, Jacob Edmond, CEO of Ductworks, will be interviewing experts in the industry to bring you insights and knowledge about the latest trends, techniques, and challenges in millwork. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and join us as we explore the world of millwork. Here's Jacob.
Good morning. Thanks, Mark, for joining us here on Verify in Field. We have today Mark Smith, who is an industrial technology teacher at Reed Custer High School, as well as, I believe, an adjunct professor, contributes to the education committee with, what is the name of the organization?
The WCA, Woodwork Career Alliance with North America.
Career Alliance. Yes, awesome. So we have Mark on today to talk about education, particularly in high school and in the U.S., and a little bit about what it looks like today, how we got here, and what opportunities there are that he's providing in his program and elsewhere that is available in the U.S. So thank you for joining today, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Jacob.
To get started, I thought it'd be good if you could share a little bit about your background and how you got involved in teaching industrial technology and just your path to where you are today in your role.
Sure. I've been teaching for almost 30 years now, and teaching is very heavy in my family. My mother was a grade school teacher. My dad was a college professor, and I have brothers and sisters who are in education. I have aunts and uncles who are in education. So there must be something in our DNA that draws us to education.
Yeah.
But it probably started in high school. I had a fantastic industrial arts, that's what we called it back then, teacher in high school. His name was John Hart, and he was teacher of the year for probably 30 years. It was really something. And my senior year, I was probably down in his lab 4 periods a day. And so it was great. But ending up in education myself is unusual in how it happened. And that is, even though I loved doing this kind of stuff in high school, it didn't dawn on me that I could be a teacher, even though my parents are teachers. And you know how it is when you're 17, you're a little self-indulged there, self-involved. And so when I went to college, finally, when it was time to declare a major, because I hadn't declared yet, I asked my parents, I said, I don't know what to do. Nothing really at the college level interests me. And I was only going to college because my parents did. This really wasn't that interesting to me. And they said, have you ever thought about being a teacher? And you were fantastic in high school with industrial arts. We think you'd be a great teacher. I said, oh, okay. The one time I listened to my parents.
Yeah.
And so I declared that major. And when I student taught, I knew I'd made the right decision. And so the interesting thing for me about being a teacher is they don't tell you in college how much you're going to care about your students. They don't tell you that. And so that has really been something that has affected me over the years, how much I want to help my students. The other thing about my teaching career is I have left education two times to work in industry, not because I was unhappy with teaching, but because I wanted to keep my skills and my understanding as up to date as much as I could. And then I would work in industry for a few years, and then I would come back to education. And so there's a downside to that. It means you have to go through the process of becoming tenured all over again. What's the big deal? It's because every time you get observed, you have to fill out all kinds of questions ahead of time, and then you have to put together all the stuff you're going to do, and then you get observed, and then you have a post meeting, and then you have to fill out all kinds of stuff online. Every time you get observed, you probably spend 10 hours getting ready and debriefing. It's a lot of work. And you get observed 2 to 3 times every year for 4 years. Leaving your job and forsaking your tenure and going through that process again is a lot of work. But I was willing to do it because it was very important to me to work in industry to maintain my skills as a manufacturing teacher. I'm currently working at Reed Custer High School Before that, I was at Morris High School. Before that, I was at Shiloh High School. And so I love my job. My tagline for my teaching career is helping young people find their way. And
Awesome.
yeah.
That's amazing. So those two times that you left, what did you go do? What types of roles were you doing?
So one time when I left, I became the national director of an organization that works with teachers such as myself and industry such as yourself. Industry and education do not speak the same language. They are not producing the same thing, and they have a hard time working together. And I took over for Wilf Tarunsky, and the organization was Woodlinks. And they are no longer around. As I say, chloroformed that organization, and we rolled all of our efforts into the WCA, the Woodwork Career Alliance. It was a better fit for North America,
Mm-hmm.
the United States. But I would meet with industry and I would meet with high schools. And so I spent probably 5 years doing that. Another thing I did was I worked at the Riverside Door Company, where we made 5-piece doors for the kitchen cabinet industry. And we made other things like wall panels and tour boxes and things that companies who are building kitchen cabinets might not want to do. They might want to outsource them. And when I was there, I was in charge of their CNC department and their shaper department. And so I think I worked for them for 2 years. And those are the kind of things I would do.
Okay. Awesome. So shifting gears a little bit, talking about the state of education in high schools and the trades, can you explain for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with what that looks like? And we're talking, I would assume, primarily about the U.S. is where both you and I are and what you're working in. But what does education in high schools look like related to the trades specifically today?
Sure. The education system is on a pendulum. It's always swinging back and forth. And right now it's starting to swing back to the trades. But for the last, 40 years, it's been pretty bleak. And there are two things that have contributed to that. One is 100 years ago, we passed a child labor law, which is a good thing, because having come out of the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, where 10-year-olds were working in factories, that's probably not the best thing to do with your 10-year-olds. And so they passed that law where, under a certain age, you cannot work in a manufacturing setting, which is fine as long as your youth have some kind of way to get education, experience, skills in manufacturing. And where they got that was in high school. But then something happened in the late 70s. A university that shall remain nameless came out with a poster that had two guys on it. And two guys because at that time, mostly just men worked in manufacturing and things like that. And so on one side of the poster showed this young man who had a white hat on. He had a nice, dress shirt tucked into his pants. He's holding a clipboard. And on the other side showed another guy who was in these dirty overalls. And you'll recognize the poster if you don't already as soon as I say the heading. And the heading of this poster was "Work Smarter, Not Harder." And this university put this poster out, and it was in my high school counselor's office and probably every high school counselor's office across the nation, because what they really wanted to do was get more butts and seats at the university level. And Mike Rowe has hit this really hard, and I agree with Mike. Anybody tells you don't have to work hard in life, they're lying to you. The poster should say, "Work smart and hard." And that poster became the mantra of the secondary education system for the last 40 years. And so when I was in high school, even though my skills lied in my hands, that was very evident. That's how I should make a living. But I was unaware of that possibility uh, because my parents weren't really aware of it. And my high school counselor, who shall remain nameless because he's a good guy, just doing what he knows to do, was constantly telling me, Mark, you need to go to college. You need to go to college. Can you still see me?
Yeah.
Oh, my screen went blank. That's weird. And so I went to college. Fortunately, I enjoy teaching and that's what I do. And so for the last 40 years, the United States has slowly been removing CTE type programs from high schools. When I was in high school, there was an estimated, this number is unverifiable. I got this number from an organization that for years and years has supplied technology, tools, and devices to education. But they say when they first began, there were about 50,000 CTE programs in the United States that involve wood. Now, if you're lucky, 10 years ago, I got this number from an organization. They said about 5,000. So that hasn't just happened to the woodworking in high schools, it's happened to everything across the board. So that means for the last 40 years, high school kids have been unaware of the opportunities. They haven't been able to even see them at their school, let alone take a course. And so that has led us to the situation we're in today where baby boomers are retiring by the droves and leaving all these openings. And we have generation after generation of young people who are either unaware of this or have a bad perspective on these jobs. And so now we have a real skills gap.
Yep.
And as they say, we are reaping what we've sown. Now, the pendulum is swinging the other way, probably mostly due to necessity. And something very interesting that's happening in education, at least in Illinois right now, I don't know about other states, it's probably similar. But in Illinois, I have built a program where I have industry very heavily involved. I have about 70 industry supporters, both locally and nationwide, who supply me with job opportunities, internships, in-kind donations, you name it, all kinds of things, field trips, whatever. And so I have put together a very comprehensive program where kids get quite an exposure to the wood industry. Those that are in power in Springfield, which is our state capital, have decided we think that's the best way to do things. And so now they're starting to mandate that all CTE teachers do what I'm doing. And they're not doing it because of me. And I'm not the only one doing that. It's just, I know me, I'm in my own little world. And so it's interesting they're doing that. So
Does that mean they're mandating that you essentially are getting funding from private sector?
no, what they're mandating are many of the things I'm doing. So the first thing that happened a couple of years ago was you had to do a comprehensive local needs assessment. And that meant I had to show we had people both locally and in the surrounding area that value what I'm doing and need my students. And so I put it out an email to all my industry supporters, and within 24 hours, I had 25 letters emailed to me. But that's one of the many things you had to do in a local needs assessment. And another thing that's being mandated now is you have to show ties to industry. So I have to show that I have job opportunities in my industry. I have to show there are internship opportunities, apprenticeship opportunities, which consequently about 4 years ago, I helped Kelly Victor Burke of Michigan rewrite the National Department of Labor's apprenticeship description for the wood industry. And that's a nice feather in my cap because that's something that's going to help my program, something that's going to help my students. And so there are lots of things happening. The final thing that's happening, which I saw one of my children who are in their late 20s, early 30s, sent me a TikTok video talking about how this state is repealing the child labor law. And of course, I had to say to my child, the person that put that on TikTok is really not representing accurately what's happening. Imagine that. And I said, what's really happening there, and same thing is happening in Illinois, they are making it possible now for people that are minors to get experience in industry in spite of the child labor law, because the child labor law is a good thing, but it has inadvertently made it impossible for high school students to get on the job experience. And that's important now since there aren't very many CTE programs. And so the state of Illinois is getting ready to pass a law where if you're between the ages, I think, of 16 and 18, you can work in industry part-time while you're going to school, and they're going to provide some type of insurance that goes along with that. Your minors, not your 10-year-olds, but your minors in high school can get experience because that's really needed. And
Yep.
those are some of the interesting things that are happening. And of course, 40 years of sidelining CTE education has really allowed people to grow up with misconceptions about industry and the wood industry. And so we're also looking to change that. I just took my students up to Parenti and Pirelli. I think that's their name.
Parenti and Raffaele, I think.
Yeah, Rafi, thank you. I can never remember that.
Yeah.
I've known them for years and years. And so they got to see that place, which is a great place to tour. And they were doing cool stuff. And it's a great working environment and it's well lit. I think it's even air conditioned. And that's not what parents are thinking when they think about manufacturing. That's something we have to change as well. So,
yeah, you touched on something there that I want to dive into a little bit and speak from industry perspective as well, is about the misconceptions about the trades and specifically in the woodworking industry. Because I think maybe now as people will be listening to you speak and talk about even that work smarter, work not harder idea, and that visual of the one type of worker and the other, right? And I think people will probably hear and listen to this and think, okay, but you guys are saying, hey, we should have more cabinet makers and more people that just are going to go and spend their entire career working hard on a shop floor in a dirty environment. And I think there's a very negative mindset of that for some people.
yes.
But what people aren't aware of is that, like, today the skills gap that we have is not just that entry level labor.
That's
it
right.
is, but what we have now is the very skilled leadership, the very skilled technical. I've spent my entire career managing and working in the engineering and design side of the woodworking industry. And we have still today, the vast majority of the people filling those roles are end of career, and nobody's backfilling that. And what's hard about that is that even though, yes, you can go get an education in CAD and CAM and design, you lack that knowledge that comes with experience building the products that we are designing. And so by not having people go straight from high school or even university, but go into the trades at an entry level, learning the very physical aspect of using saws and the machinery of how we build what we build, you still can elevate and have a career that goes through many different roles, and eventually you can run a company, own a company. But those higher leadership roles are now suffering because people haven't gone through that early career entry level stage. And so, and that's just as much on industry as it is on education, right? Because the companies aren't creating that career path either, where they're showing, hey, you could start here and start sweeping floors. You could start on a cabinet line, and eventually you have a path to being an engineer, project manager, a project executive. But we need those people who have, the early life experience that a trade program or CTE program gives them, that then leads to being able to go and work in manufacturing, in hands-on, and gain those skills that then lead to them being better qualified for those other roles later on. So I want people to, as we're talking, understand how important it is that you gain that experience, and that we need people that follow a career path in the industry, not just laborers that stay laborers for their career.
Yes, that's very true. And I think the reason that the disconnect between industry and education has happened is because in the past, industry didn't need to proactively do anything because kids were getting exposure to the different career opportunities. And so they were doing exactly what you were talking about. But now, I just took my students to a pretty nice cabinet manufacturing shop about 20 minutes up the road from our school. And everybody working there was 50 years and older. There was, I think I only saw two people in their 20s in that whole place. And education has to do different. And unfortunately, I think industry is going to have to do different for a while to attract. You can't just gone are the days of I'm putting a job advertisement in the newspaper and I have 30 applicants show up and half of them are qualified. And of those, we found a great person. And they're going to have to begin building their own new hire pipelines, at least for a few decades until this turns around. I'm speaking in Las Vegas in July at the AWFS, which is the Association of Woodworking and Furnishing Suppliers. It's like the IWF, it's their sister trade show there. And I'm going to be speaking on how industry can build a new hire pipeline, how they can work with local schools, whether it's high school or colleges, to begin changing this pendulum that's swung all the way to the other side. But you are so right. Not only are these career opportunities different than what most parents think, people aren't signing up for them. And so that's got to change.
Real quick, what you talked about AWFS, for people who are listening, a few episodes before this, I interviewed Adria Salvatore, who is the director over at AWFS, and that's a great episode to go back and listen. She talks about the CWWK program, which I assume is what you're speaking as part of, as well as what that fair is all about. Another good episode that would be good, I talked about the skills gap with Jonathan Adams from Adams Group. Very much talks about from the industry perspective. He's a vice president of a large millwork company here in Georgia. He talks about how they're struggling with this, how the industry has struggled, and how they're trying to combat this. I want to shift gears a little bit and have you talk specifically about your program at Reed Custer High School. Can you tell us about what that program is, the types of trades and skills that students are learning, and what that looks like?
Yeah. So Reed Custer High School is a high school of about 600 students. It's not a really big high school, but it's much bigger than my high school. I think my high school had about 400. And so it's a smaller school, and there are advantages and disadvantages of teaching at a smaller school compared to a larger school. One of the advantages is your administration. And like at Shiloh High School, I think I ate lunch every day with the superintendent, which you would never do that up here in the Northland in Illinois. The school's too big. You'd never even see the superintendent, at least very often. And so at a small school, your administration, your counselors, everybody. And so they can get to know you. They get to know what you're doing. They see who you are. They see all the things you're doing outside of your job that are related to your job. And at a big school, that's going to be much harder. And that's important for the people that have oversight over you and that are helping you and are directing your program to know who you are and what you do, because they need to be your supporters. They need to be your cheerleaders. I worked in a school where the high school kids were coming in to me and saying, "Mr. Smith, the high school counselor wouldn't let me sign up for your program. I had to bring my parents in and force them." Yeah. And that was a much larger school. And the high school counselor, see, the thing about a high school counselor is they went to high school, they went to college, and then they got their job. And they have to know a lot of different opportunities for the students and very little about each. And there's no way a person can know everything about everything, myself included. And the high school counselor typically only knows what the colleges are feeding them, what government organizations are feeding them, because industry is not coming in and meeting with the high school counselors and saying, here's our career opportunities. Here's what the students will be doing. Here's our pay ranges. They're not doing that. So your high school counselor doesn't know that. And so this particular high school counselor was the head of the counselor department there, and they were actively turning students away from my program because they're telling them, you don't need that. That won't help you. That school offered me tenure and I quit. Because even though I was doing all the things necessary to change that viewpoint, they were not interested in having it changed. And there were all kinds of other outside circumstances that were going on that have nothing to do with the counselor that were also contributing to that. And it's not that these people were bad people. They're not. They were good people. They're just doing all the things they've been trained to do, and the circumstance they have inherited of the last 40 years saying the trades are not a good opportunity.
Are there also, and I don't want to derail too much, but is there some amount of the statistics of a high school look very good if they have a ton of graduates that go to college?
Yep, that's the other side of the coin. For the last 40 years, schools have been evaluated on their preparing students for college entry-level skills. The tests that kids take are based on that. High school graduation requirements are based on that. And it's interesting you brought that up. That's a double sword. Not only are we telling kids that unless you go to college, you're a loser. No one actually says that, but we all know the unwritten rules in life. But the second thing that's doing is, as the graduation rates or requirements increase, that means less and less time for students to take electives, which are where they explore the different things that they might find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That has really done a whammy on CTE. And I'm now at Reed Custer High School, and fortunately at Reed Custer High School, they value CTE.
Mm-hmm.
I have a principal who just retired June 5th. His dad was a truck driver, so he's very familiar with CTE. And so he's been very supportive. I have my normal duties as a teacher, and then I have things I do that are outside the purview of my job description. And as a teacher, I'm developing and implementing a computer integrated manufacturing setup. And so we have traditional tools and we have computer driven tools as well. We have a CNC piece of equipment, we have a CNC laser, and we have 3D printers. And so we have high tech stuff and we have traditional stuff. But due to the environment I found myself in when I began teaching, which was very anti-CTE across the state, across the nation, maybe worse in Illinois, I don't know, I have expanded my job description. And the second half of my job, which is something I put on myself, is marketing my program. And so I have quite a marketing apparatus, which is constantly throwing out into the public, mostly industry, what my students are doing, what we're doing at the school here, because that yields certain fruits that are good for my students and good for my program. I teach a computer integrated manufacturing setup. And so let me go through my classes real quick here. The first class the students have to take is orientation to technology. And in that class, they build a longboard. It's like a skateboard, but it's bigger. Mm-hmm. And they have to use all of our high-tech equipment to do it. We use AutoCAD, we use Carveco, which used to be ArtCam, we use MasterCam, and we have other software we use too, but in my other classes. And so they get exposed to everything we do in the shop and everything we do in our computer lab. And then they can see, is this something I like? And if so, they take other classes from me. They have to get a C or better. I have so many students signing up for that class that we had to make sure that the only ones that are getting through the system were ones who are willing to work. So if you get less than a C, you can't take any more classes from me. And I don't have it doesn't happen to very many students, but it does happen to a few. And I tell my students, I say, I know this is setting the standard higher than what most classes are, but it's not fair to future students for a student to take up a seat who doesn't work when there's 10 students waiting in the wings who are willing to work. And they all go, yeah, we get that. Now, of course, I don't like it when they get a less than C and they can't take any more classes from me, but intellectually, at least, they understand what we're doing. I also have a CAD class where we teach AutoCAD. That's a dual credit class with the local community college. We have a CAD CAM 1 and 2 where we take CAD and CAM and we use it to develop a product. And in CAD CAM 1, the product is preset. They can make some adjustments to it. And CAD CAM 2, they start from scratch and build it from the ground up. We have a STEM 1 class where we build an acoustic guitar. I have a special relationship with Taylor Guitars, and they donate all the raw materials and a few other things to my program so my students can build acoustic guitars. And I would have to say an acoustic guitar is the most complicated project I've ever done with high school students. It's really something. We have production 1 and 2. And in our production class is where we build kitchen cabinet sets for people, and we go out and install them in their house. And I jokingly tell my students and other people when we talk about it, I said, this class is, when you're done with this class and we're installing these cabinets in the homeowner's house, this is going to be probably one of the few times where you have people crying tears of joy over your homework. And they chuckle because a lot of my students, they love CTE, but they hate school.
Yeah.
Now, what they don't realize is they love learning, but they don't like learning the way the school has traditionally done it. And their homework, they probably aren't putting in 100%. And mom and dad are screaming at them, what are you doing? So in production 2, the students that were in production 1 and taking production 2 now, they have more of a leadership role. And they're still doing the work, but they're my right-hand man, right-hand woman type situation, and they're leading the students, and they're doing some of the more difficult things. And so they get a little bit more experience in leadership compared to what they would have in production 1. Today, 4 of my students and myself are going to the Architectural Woodwork Institute Chicago chapter golf outing, and we're going to be welcoming people in as they come in for lunch, and we're going to make a short presentation. There'll be a few of my industry supporters in this group, and 2 of the students that are attending were in production 2 this year, and they'll get to talk about their cabinet job they did. So that'll be fun for them. We also have a 3D printing class, and the 3D printing class can stand alone in any industry, but we do work it into our wood manufacturing agenda as well. We, in our production class, this is one of the things that we are constantly printing on our 3D printers. In our production class, we build kitchen cabinets, and we build face frame kitchen cabinets. That's what most of the people want that hire us to do a job. But we don't like the compact cup hinges that go along with face frame cabinets. They're a little cheap. They're not quite the quality that would go in a frameless cabinet. But the industry has an adaptation. There's a little plate that goes on the inside edge of the face frame, and then your cup hinge clips onto that. But that hinge hangs off into space with nothing behind it. And we did that for years, and it works, and no one ever had one break, but we never really liked that. And so now what we've done is we've taken that plate, we brought it into CAD, and we've created a model of that plate so we can get some numbers off of it. And we now 3D print a little spacer that is the shape of the plate, at least the part that hangs off behind the face frame. And it's about 0.485 thick. And that gets attached to the cabinet underneath that plate, and then the plate clips on top of it. And so now that plate that the cup hinge, that plate that the hinge attaches to now has a shim underneath it that's attached, so they're rock solid. As far as I know, we're the only people in the world doing that.
A post about that, or pictures of that. I think on LinkedIn or somewhere.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so that's how we rope our 3D printing class into our woodworking classes. Now, of course, students do all kinds of other things too.
Yeah.
And those are the classes I teach.
Awesome. That's a great overview, and I think that's a lot more than I understood, and that's a lot of really good information and stuff that you're teaching them, and looks like you've mapped out a very good path, as well as it sounds like there's at least like one or two programs where they get some college credits as well. Talking a little bit about, you've talked about how your extracurriculars or things that are like above your job description. Obviously, you do a lot of marketing and social media. That's how I've followed you for years, through LinkedIn. How did that start? How did you come to decide or realize, hey, I should be posting on the internet, I should be sharing what we're doing and actively marketing? Because I mean, I see you share your student stuff, you share videos where you're speaking, you share activities you're doing, and I think that's amazing. But how did that become, and what type of impact has that made on your programs?
Yes. Back when I first started teaching, even as a student, I knew when I was in high school, my high school teacher was a great industrial tech teacher, but he grew up at a time where he didn't have to really reflect what industry was doing. He taught it like a hobby, and it didn't matter because his job was not in jeopardy. Shortly after I graduated, the political climate began to change towards CTE. And even though no one specifically sat me down and said these things to me, I could see it. I could see the writing on the wall. And so I knew I had to do something different than what my high school teacher did. And it wasn't that he's doing a bad job. He grew up in a different time. He was working in a different time than what you and I find ourselves in. And so I knew I had to do something different. I didn't know for sure what it was, but I knew it had to be different. Otherwise, I was going to worry about, am I going to have a job? Am I going to be giving my students skills they need to go out and get a job? And so one of the first things I began to do was to attend industry trade shows, which I didn't know about as a kid. That's not something my parents were involved in. My parents were involved in the education system as it was. And so I didn't know. So we started off, I happened to find an industry trade show up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is north of where I live in Illinois. I'm in the Chicagoland area. And it was called it's not a very big show. It's the Woodworking something. I can't remember now. But my wife and I attend this trade show. I walk into this trade show. We're walking around and I see this booth. And on the front of the table is this banner called Woodlinks. And I don't know what this is, but I'm looking at all my opportunities at this trade fair. And so I walk up to it, and a gentleman named Jerry Finch is behind this table. And Jerry Finch at the time was the lead instructor at Fox Valley College up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And I talked to Jerry, and after talking to Jerry, I realized I have found my people. Because the way he talked and what he talked about was all the things that I've intuitively understood and many things that I hadn't thought of yet. And that's the organization I eventually worked for as the national director. And why do I mention Jerry in light of your question? Because Jerry was a master networker for his program. And so Jerry really became a mentor for me, someone I looked to. And Jerry is where I learned about how to begin the beginnings of marketing my program. And so the first thing I did when I began to market my program was we had the internet, but it was in its infancy. There was no social media. There was no streaming. About the most constructive thing we could do with the internet at the time, people like me, was email. And so about once a month, I would send an email update to all my people I had in my contact list on my email. And this was before Google email, and I think I was using Outlook, which I still use at my school, but I also have my Gmail account. And I would send out a picture or a little small short video because the internet wasn't what it is today. And we began doing that. And so that was unusual. High school teachers typically weren't doing things like this. I always jokingly talk about in the education system, unless you work there or you have a child in the school that's female, because females talk about things, males typically don't, you have no idea what's going on in the school unless you have one of those two things. And so industry has no idea what's going on in your school. And so I would send out these emails. And so the trade journals began picking these things up and writing articles about my program. And things just began to build on this giant snowball, began building and rolling down the mountain. And one of the most interesting things that happened was we had a article inside of Custom Woodworking Business Magazine. I don't even know if it exists anymore. And a gentleman down in Louisville, Kentucky saw this article, and he emails me and says, "Mark, I have an opportunity that might be a good fit for you and your students." He was in the wooden sunglasses business, and he was looking for a manufacturer that could help them develop and manufacture wood sunglasses. He had the optics side of it all set up and worked out, but he didn't have the manufacturing side set up. And so I said, "That sounds really cool. We'll do that." And so we spent a year, students and I, doing research and development on how are we going to hold these little tiny wooden sunglasses on our CNC machine without paying $100,000 for someone to build a special jig that has jaws on it that open up and all these things. And how are we going to steam bend these things, and how are we going to hold them to finish them? And so long story short, we got all that worked out and we began manufacturing these sunglasses for this company. And my students would get checks in the mail for doing work. It was incredible. And my students got to see Oprah Winfrey with some on her face, the president's daughter, Bono from YouTube. And it was really something. They got to see New York runway models walking down the catwalk wearing the sunglasses that their grubby little hands had made. And so that was when I knew I'm on to something with networking, with marketing my program. And so then along comes social media. Of course, Facebook was the first. And so we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, and we're on LinkedIn. I have a Twitter account, but I don't use it. I can only do so much. And so LinkedIn, all these different platforms reach different people. Facebook really just reaches parents today. Kids are on it, but not so much. So I use Facebook for parents, so parents can see what's going on. And LinkedIn, of course, is used for industry, business. It's like a business Facebook. Instagram catches a wide net, catches a lot of creative people. But one of the great things that social media does is it catches people that are doing more than normal. They're doing extra, which means they have a passion for something, or they are willing to do more than just get by. Just like you're doing with this podcast, you're doing more than what you have to do. And so you find a lot of people online who are go-getters. They want to do something. And what I've learned is there are people out in the world who want to help me. They want to help my students, but they don't know what to do and they don't know how to find me. But now social media makes that possible, where you can find these people. And I have all kinds of things that we do. I don't do them all every year, but there must be about 50 different things that we do to market our program, but we don't do them every year. It just depends on what's going on, what tools we employ. But we do use our social media platforms pretty regularly. So it's been really something. I don't talk about it publicly, but the amount of in-kind donation that industry has given my program is staggering. If I said the number, you wouldn't believe it. Also, the amount of career opportunities that they have extended us. I have a list of companies that have emailed me, called me, talked to me from all around the nation. There must be close to 50 companies on it. Now, there's way more companies than that out in the world, but they have found me and they're asking for my students. And many of them are local. We had a company come all the way from Texas last school year to meet with me and our administration to talk about how can we set up a mutually beneficial relationship where your students come down in the summer, 17, 18-year-olds, and work for us for a few weeks to see if they want to do this, because we're looking for people and we can't find them. And this is a great company too. We have companies, quite a few states that are doing that as well. And so 30 years ago, I had no idea it would develop into this, but Jerry Finch really was the person that started it all.
That's amazing. We're coming close on time, but I want to, for people that are listening and want to find out more about how they could partner with you, like you're describing, how they could find out more about the Reed Custer High School program that you teach, or just what opportunities they can either contribute or help, or even just learn from what you're doing and maybe help start it in their region. How can they contact you? How can they find out more?
They can email me. I'll give you a couple emails here. One is my school email. It's mark.smith@rc, Romeo Charlie 255.net. That's my school email. Or they can email me at marksmitheducate@gmail. They can also go to one of our websites, RCHS, that's Reed Custer High School Industrial Tech, or rchsit.weebly.com. Weebly is Webly. And there's a contact thing on there where they can email us and they can see what we're doing. And of course, they can Google Reed Custer High School in Braidwood, Illinois, and they can find us there. And I think there's a link on our page that'll take you to my website. And of course, they have all the teacher emails listed there as well. I think they can also Google Mark Smith and Reed Custer High School, and they can find some things and find my email there as well. And or of course, they can just do it the old-fashioned way. They can Google Reed Custer High School and they can call us.
Yeah.
So
what are there any specific needs that your program has, or opportunities that people can contribute to that you are looking for more of?
We're always looking for companies who want to come in and participate in our career and college day. We have a big field house at our school, and we turn the field house into a miniature trade fair. And we have colleges come in, we have industry come in, the military comes in. And last year, I think I had 5 or 10 companies for the wood industry represented there. So we're always looking for people it's beginning of October to come in and participate, because I want my students to see that it's not just Mr. Smith saying this. These people are saying it too. And so that would be something great. And of course, we're always looking for places for my students to work. And you can't ever have too many industry supporters, people that are willing to help your students. And so those would probably be the biggest.
Awesome. Are there any other final thoughts or things we didn't get to that you wanted to share, or that
I would say to any industry people that are listening, gone are the days of posting a job opening in the newspaper and you're going to get all the applicants you need. Those days are gone. And they aren't coming back for a while. And so you really need to think about, what can I do differently that will attract future employees? And of course, one of the things that they can do is get involved at the local schools. Just having a presence at the school where you come in once a year and you give a presentation, or you come in and help hand out awards, or I got about 36 different things that industry can do at the high school and college level, just so that they have a seat at the table. That will begin to make a huge difference. My wife always jokingly says, the world is run by people who show up. That's half the battle. Just show up at a school and continue showing up day, week, month after month, or year after year. Eventually, things are going to start happening in your favor because you're present. And so that's really what I would encourage them to do. And like many things that are worth doing, it's hard work. You're going to face lots of rejection. You're going to hear lots of no's, because not everybody out there is forward thinking. Not everybody out there is willing to work smart and hard. Not everybody out there is a visionary. And so you have to have some thick skin, and you have to be willing to overcome that. But eventually, if you continue, things will begin to happen and you'll find new employees.
That's great advice, Mark. I really appreciate all you've shared with us today. I'm grateful that you took time out to come on here. I hope that this is an opportunity for more people to hear about the work you're doing. As I've been following on for many years, I'm very grateful for the work you're doing for our industry and hope to promote it and be able to continue, and maybe other people can take note and do similar things and learn from what you're doing. It's very much needed. Thank you for being a guest today and joining us. I know that we could cover a lot more territory, and so I'd love to have you on again one day.
Jacob, thanks for having me, and thanks for doing what you're doing, because you're marketing the wood industry. You're showing that the wood industry is out there and there's things to do in it. So thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Mark.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do you want to stay up to date about industry insights, new content, and our community of millworkers? Go to ductworksmw.com to sign up for our newsletter. I'll see you in the next episode of Verify in Field.